How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Above Average Podcast, where we talk to people that are above average in mindset and action. And today we have a special guest named Cameron, who I met in the camera and photo space, but really we've also talked about fitness and entrepreneurship and work and life and a bunch of other things that we're going to cover today. So Cameron, what's going on, man?
Hey, how you doing, Ethan? I totally agree. We are wide-ranging individuals. My problem might be picking something to do. So
Exactly. Same with me, man. Obviously, I'm in the same boat with careers and interest. And I feel like I end up being a jack of all trades, whether I like it or not. I think it's just my personality. I've just accepted I get interest in a lot of things. I don't necessarily always specialize in a lot, but I will pick a couple at a time that I end up doing way more. And then I kind of, things change. Maybe I back off or change it or whatever. So what's your biggest interest right now? Well, let's just jump right into it.
That's a very good, very heavy question. What has been capturing my mind recently? So I guess to give more background, I know both of you from weirdly different circles.
Yeah, we go way back.
Intertwined, and there's pictures of me and Will. I think there's a really good picture on my phone. I'll send it to you so you can pop it on the screen. Of us in Halloween. You're dressed up in a regular Halloween costume. I'm dressed up as a calculator in third grade.
Oh,
a box.
I remember that.
A cardboard box with sponges and the
Yep.
numbers on it.
Yep.
Long story short, I went to engineering school, and now I kind of like to blend both the creative and technical things in all that I do. So I've been working on a lot of photo projects. I had Ethan actually sit for a portrait project I did, photographing people in ultraviolet infrared light, so you actually can't see it with your eyes, and I captured it on film. So really excited about that, and more projects in that flavor of things.
So you've gone down the rabbit hole with cameras way more than most people.
Yes.
We were.
I'm in the hole. I can't see the light is slowly disappearing.
You are in the hole. You are a camera scientist compared to any other human. That's oh, I shoot this kind of camera work, or I do this, or I've shot this professionally. You're doing way more technical and innovative things with cameras than I think I've seen anybody do. Probably anybody that I've ever met.
Yeah.
Nobody's done the amount of technical expertise work and, finagling and putting things together and doing interesting concepts too.
Yeah.
So I did that one with you. And then I did another thing too, where I was in the, what river was I in? I forget which one I was in, but I was in one of the rivers midwinter for a shoot too with you, which that one is more distinct to my memory because I feel like I was going to die that day because it was very cold.
A little bit of an ice plunge. So
it was a Pittsburgh ice plunge. It was
Polar plunge. Yeah.
It was, yeah.
Trademark.
There was ice floating around, not around me, but there's ice in the river, and I got in there for a whopping, minute and a half.
I don't think I've seen those pictures. I know the ones that you're talking about with the infrared, but I don't think
They're tasteful nudes.
I don't think I know you did that.
That was an early portrait series that I did. I mean, my biggest struggle in terms of putting together a body of work is there's photographers that are known for street work or architecture or buildings, landscapes, what have you. I have, for whatever reason, been drawn to taking pictures of people. And the hardest part is thematically bringing all those things together. So unless you're shooting for a brand or a campaign or everyone's there for a particular reason, how are we going to tie all of those very unique stories of everyone you photographed together? And I did a series essentially with different hats. So I had mining hats, fireman's hats. I had him wear a swim cap, given his history as a swimmer. And made him jump in the river. But generally speaking, it's been a good process. That was my first time putting together a show and sort of learning the ins and outs. I've always been sort of an outsider on the art world. I always considered myself an athlete, an engineer, and then an artist. And now that balance is shifting as I get older. But you touched on a lot, Ethan, and very kind words with my camera expertise. But I always like to describe myself as an active learner in that respect. So this past fall, I actually took a course. I did my undergrad at CMU and then went back for a PhD course in computational photography. So it's the most advanced computer science and photography course on the face of the planet. It was a cool $9,600 for one class. which is where CMU, the price tag is a little crazy nowadays, but it was awesome. I literally met the guy who, on your phone where you have like HDR photos, so it like helps the pictures look better. I met the guy who wrote the algorithm for that in 1994. He came in and like presented to the class, and now he's founded a production company, and that production company is the one that James Cameron commissions for Avatar. So he's in charge of, he built the entire camera rig and built all of the software and built the 3D compositing and built the coloring and built the lighting, like hardware, software, all from scratch.
Wow.
So he was in your class. Like he was presenting in your class.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. Hiring too. I put in an application. No, I'm kidding.
Hey, I mean, if this ever blows up, just make sure you put your plugs in there that you want to go see, go meet, no promises on our end that our podcast will get anywhere.
We're getting there.
But that's pretty interesting. We'll have to talk more about it because I can say this on here now, but I am starting at CMU for a career. So I will have the opportunity to go there for free if I want to. So
you should take advantage of it. It's great.
Yeah, there's either some courses individually that I'd want to do or other programs just because, that college is very well known. It does have some diversity. It leans more into like obviously tech, so, but I would like to learn more about what you experienced there with it. So that would be cool. But what's led you from, what led you to getting an interest in cameras in the first place? Like, I was really curious about that because I don't think we've ever talked about that. Because how did you find your way in there? Because like you're kind of like that in the same respect as me, where I was athletic in high school. I was an athlete in college, and I went to school for athletics. I didn't care about going for school, but secondary to that, I liked playing with cameras and doing creative stuff, but it wasn't on the forefront for me.
Yeah.
So how do you find yourself there?
That's a very good question. And I'm like, you both went to school for athletics, right?
I mean,
generally speaking.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
Yeah.
I think I probably would have found myself in the same place. I think there was a fear growing up, whether it was just socially conditioned or family, that I needed to go to school to do whatever I needed to do or to be. And then as I got older, I realized I had that like internal drive that, for better or for worse, sometimes you just can't go to sleep at night, but it also lets you kind of like figure things out because you have ideas that are sort of coming at all times. If I did it all over again, I probably would have went to school for athletics and like kicked for football or played rugby. But initially got into photo through modeling, believe it or not. So I started out modeling. I kind of looked like a baby up until I was 21 or so. And then a friend of a friend had me like do some casual photo shoots for their, I think, like phone case brand. And I ended up getting signed here in Pittsburgh with my agent. And then after that, you spend a lot of time on set, and I'm like I've always been a curious person, and you sort of ask questions of, okay, well, what are all these lights and cameras doing? Because everyone else is sitting there scrolling Instagram or Twitter or whatever, and can feel boring / lonely / empty. So just looking for something to fill my day. I'd either bring a book, or there's sometimes I'd literally like bring my computer and program on the side, just to pass the time. But that's where I picked up the interest in photography. And then more recently, it's sort of had a rebirth in the analog photography. So like difference between digital and analog, being the digital cameras, you can like read off files, and the analog stuff you're shooting on film. Analog cameras have like a very rich history, and I picked one up actually that used to belong to my grandfather, and picked it up just clearing out stuff over, I think, COVID, whenever you're sort of like just sifting through your things, you're stuck in your house, like what else are we going to do? And the thing worked. And the beauty of the old machines and the sort of old way of being with the cameras is everything is mechanical. So long as it hasn't rusted, like it is literally the same exact camera that was around maybe in the 60s or the 70s. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's how you just dove into it.
Yeah. And then a lot of it's like I'm a big fan of internet rabbit holes for Google search, add Reddit on the
add Reddit to start going.
On the ad, and start going. And then the scary part is whenever you get past the threshold of what people on Reddit know, and you go to obscure, like maybe like a camera specific internet forum that's archived from 2004, and the guys are talking have long since passed away, and you're like, whoa. You're like poking around, and it's like, how could I ever? You're talking to like ghosts, which is a strange thing that like the internet has facilitated. So
it's true. I mean, it's been around long enough that you're at that point now. Whereas before it was. I mean, that's kind of more recent that there was forums and different places like that like were around like before Reddit, and now those are just They're still up there though.
I've
You
never
know,
thought about that before until right now.
Yeah.
you just blew Will's mind. Look at him. He's like, holy shit.
Yeah. I think in any like technical space, there's always that thirst to connect with other people, because it's like you're studying something that's so niche. You want to like connect, grow, learn, troubleshoot things. And I think like the tech engineer people went out there, creative people went out. That's like the old like Craigslist classified ads way back in the day. So finding those people, I think, is super rewarding. And like I've had great relationships. One of the things I love about photography in general is the people that it's brought me. I've met some of the strangest and some of the coolest and chillest people. Like everyone sort of comes and meets you at a different place. And I think that's one of my favorite parts about the actual process and workflow of making images there.
And you travel a lot for it. So what's your take on, what we have here in Pittsburgh versus what you've experienced, going to New York or going to LA? Because I know you lived there for a portion of time. And what I found about Pittsburgh is there wasn't a lot of video people, and that was more what I started doing when I first came down here. Yeah. Photography, there was a lot more of that, but it was still a lot smaller than going to New York. I mean, I went to New York for a couple things. I went to like the B&H store there for like an event, and I networked there, and it was like so eye-opening that I was like, wow, this place has a lot more to offer, but there isn't nothing to offer here either.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good question. I lived briefly in New York from 2018 or late 2017, 2018 through 2020. Lived in the Lower East Side and then also in Bushwick. Bushwick is more sort of, Williamsburg used to be the artsy area that everyone used to go to. Well, at least Soho, Lower East Side, Williamsburg, and now it's East Williamsburg, and now it's Bushwick. It's sort of, you get pushed out as the gentrification starts to push along. And like the apartment difference, I like briefly dated a girl who lived in Williamsburg, and she had like a big tech salary. She was making probably $200,000, which in New York isn't that much money. But like I went in and she had like a medieval style dining table, like bigger than this table, that you could like seat probably 12 at. And in the New York apartment, that's like
big piece of furniture.
That's a big piece of furniture. It's like, this is money that I'm not used to playing with. But I think her rent was like $4,000, $4,500 a month or something like that for a studio. I lived
tracks.
Smaller place in Bushwick. It was like $900 and we split it. So it wasn't too bad. But generally speaking, New York and LA sort of have different flavors. And I think that shifted. The big thing is like social media and how that's changed a lot of how media production and consumption works. I think there's some smaller, more nimble production companies that are sort of leveraging that outsider status of like, okay, we're going to do social, we're going to do organic traction, we're going to do influencer marketing, what do they call that? UGC. And then there's still like this sort of incumbent groups of just giant marketing firms with like hundreds and tens and hundreds of $1 million of budget room. And I think there's an element of the magic there that we do miss because Pittsburgh's a little bit smaller, but that has changed. There's some like bigger brands here, like Dick's Sporting Goods is one of them. I've done modeling stuff for them. I've done video and photo assist there. So in terms of what those flavors look like, I think it's actively changing. And in New York and LA used to be like the only place that you could have a successful career as a creative. And I think that has changed broadly. I've met a few people online through Instagram, through friends of friends, and there's this like new sort of third, what's the meme, not this, not that, but the secret third thing. The secret third thing here is essentially someone living in I would say mid-sized city. So think like Pittsburgh, Columbus, Cleveland, Nashville, Kansas City, Oklahoma City, what have you. And then like you build up your reputation there, you sort of like cut your teeth on whatever your particular specialty will be. And then the beauty of the internet is everyone can see you. You get everyone's feedback, whether you like it or not. Yep. But everyone can see you. And I like recently had someone book me, like he saw some of the large format slide. So these are film slides that you can actually look at, like your parents' wedding might have been on. Saw my Instagram videos of the slides and said, I want to book you for this particular thing. I don't want a digital photo. I don't want anything. I want this. And so I went and took some photos of him in Brooklyn recently, and kind of made my way there. So I think that third phenotype is essentially having a home base in a lower cost of living area, and then having the sort of flexibility to, okay, I can dip from my apartment for like 3 weeks and really not think about, oh, maybe I need to sublet or catch up on rent or whatever. And that gives you the freedom to, well, not only go New York or LA, but go abroad. So
That's true. And I think that's true because if you're in like a mid-sized city, you can still get clients, make your like week to week, month to month, like stuff work because it's not too small. Whereas if you live in the middle of nowhere, I don't know. I mean, I've seen other people that become YouTubers because you can live anywhere in the middle of nowhere, depending on the type of content you have. And then you could really make your own life how you want it. But besides that, you know, if you're freelancing or if you're doing whatever, you still got to make a living.
Yeah.
You still need at least enough of a population to do that comfortably.
And I photograph people, so it's like I can take a picture of like a deer or a rabbit or something in the woods. It's always finding those people. So at the start, it's a lot of like literally it's a very like sales sort of thing. So you have to, it's like cold call, cold email. Like you sort of desensitize yourself to that rejection, where it's like they're not rejecting. And it's particularly hard on the creative thing. When you're selling it, it's like, okay, this might be too expensive. They don't want to buy it. When it's like, I'm going to pour my heart out creatively. Are you on board? Yes or no? And they're like, nah, this.
Yeah, that is a little different, I guess.
Yeah, it's their. It's a little more
like
more of their opinion, you know, which like I guess does at the end of the day come with anything, but like a little less cost analysis sometimes. There's like, oh, I mean, we don't want to pay for that much.
Yeah,
really, and you're like, okay, I know what that means.
Yeah,
you know,
wasn't Route 21 one of the like. One of your first?
Yeah, I modeled for Route 21 back in 2017. You might have seen me on the Cologne advertisement for Midnight Summer.
Monroeville Mall.
Yeah, Monroeville Mall, Midnight Summer. I was also on the Forbes Oakland location at Pitt, and I sort of tried to hide my face every time I walked down.
I think it's gone now, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. They took that down a while ago. But yeah, started with Rue, probably most frequently 2017, 2018. Haven't booked much since. I think it's like a younger demographic, so you sort of age out of that eventually.
For sure, yeah.
Lots of cool stuff. I'm trying to think of any weird. I've done like Fisher Price. So
I remember that. Yeah, I remember seeing that.
They drove up to Buffalo for that. So you just sort of learn to kind of rock and roll, and that's a weird thing where you get put in a situation that, like, particularly modeling, where your job is to make things look good and natural and all that, and you sort of have to leave whatever preconceived notions you have of like what the task is you're doing, whether you're like cutting a cake on camera or like holding someone else's child.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're modeling, but you're acting.
Yes, you're acting as well. It's like kind of acting, but frozen in steps. Now, I have all the respect for people who act like full time, because I'm smooth in like discrete intervals. I am not smooth like on the whole. So I struggle a bit with self tapes and acting.
Is that things. I mean, is there anything that you would like how do you get yourself in the zone for that? Are you just like, do you flip the switch and you're just...
Yeah, I will say it's a lot of blue steel in the mirror, alone, early in the morning, late at night, because you have to know what you have to have an increased level of control over your like facial muscles. Yeah. So you have to you can't really have resting bitch face. Like you need to have a smooth sort of like almost effortless way of being.
Yeah.
And then there's people who have it. I'm sort of in the middle of the road where like there's things I have naturally, and then there's things I've picked up over time and gotten better at. But even it's sort of anything. You meet athletes where it's like you go see, like LeBron James. It's like, okay, that's a different person. Mm-hmm. Like I could train my whole life, and it's like there's a difference there. And there's a similar thing with modeling. One of the girls I dated my last year of college was like that, where she was just unbelievably graceful and elegant, and like the proprioceptive control she had over her body, just like moving through space, was insane. And she's like, oh yeah, just like walk down the sidewalk. And I'm like, there's like 47 steps there that I have to do to get even an increment closer to like how smoothly you're doing things. So I felt
like awkward when we shot, and it wasn't from you. It wasn't like the setting. I was just like, I started getting in my head. Yeah. I was like, oh wait, what am I? Yeah. How do I look when I think? I'm like, I started thinking too much, and I'm like, what am I doing with my face? I don't even know what I'm doing, you know, because it's not a thing you think about on the regular. Most people don't have a lot of self-awareness on like what they look like in motion or talking. They don't think about that, you know, and then just to like be very deliberate and specific, I don't think I'm good at it. I mean, I'm just like, ugh.
Dude, I mean, you've done it on a way more professional level than I have, but like content wise, like for my business, I started just getting more creative, I guess you could say. And then I started making these videos where I was like myself playing two different characters, you know. So it would be
the banana man.
Yes, you know the one, yeah. And that, as like low stakes as it is, it's so weird every time I do it, because I have to like completely separate myself from what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, because I also have this process where like putting stuff out on social media too, like I've gotten to the point where I've conditioned myself to just not care, because it's for the sake of business. Like there is a financial aspect to it. That's the reason that I do it. So like I just put it out, and then I kind of have this gap. And then when I'm playing the two different characters, I mean, like there is a level of control to it, but it's like I'm not there. It's really, really weird. I can't describe it. And like, again, like that's very low level stuff, and I can't imagine what people feel like that are like, you know, A-list actors when they're diving into shit and like just disappearing. Yeah. And then you got to come back from that.
Yeah, it's big. And I actually live with an actor. So at CMU, I couldn't find anyone. They had a Facebook group to find roommates the first year, and then I ended up just saying, "Hey, I'm just going to roll the dice, put my name in a goblet of fire, and see who the universe matches me with." And I was matched with an actor in the School of Drama department at CMU, which is like super elite, very selective. There's literally like, I think 16 people per class year, like in the major. Wow. That's it. So there's their alumni are just like Joe Manganiello is one of them. So it's crazy alumni and crazy connections there. And the amount of like body work, breath work, you have to like let go of, you have to disconnect from yourself and then reconnect like at will, which most people through like trauma responses are either one way too far one way or the other. Yeah. And I distinctly remember they do an assignment, I think every year, where they have to emulate an animal of some sort. So my roommate was assigned like a mourning dove, and he had to stay in character as that animal for the entire week. So for the entire week, I was in my dorm room, and like he would walk up and then sort of like, you know how birds sort of like tilt their head a little bit? He would walk up to like the wall and like tilt his head and then peck like with his nose, like alone, like just totally in it. And then there was a day later in the year he greeted me as Count Dracula, like from the. So it's just sort of, there's a lot of that going on. So I know I've barely even like just brushed the surface there to bring things up. But that's good opportunity to pivot. So a question for you. So how many takes does it normally take for you to get like whenever you cut a scene like that and put it together?
Yeah, so with those clips, I think the way that it started was, number one, I moved into an apartment by myself, which was a big help. I used to live with my brother, and I like couldn't fathom just being in like my kitchen recording that when he like walks downstairs. But being by myself, like I had more just room to mess around. And actually, I think I took this from you at one of the conversations we have over the past years about just like getting ideas and then writing it down. Like, don't you? Yeah. You have a notebook next to your bed, right? Or you used to?
Notebook. I have notes on my computer. I write on my walls.
Yeah,
I have that many ideas. They're spilling out all over the place because I just can't stop writing.
Yeah.
Continue. Yes.
So I read the book. Oh shit! I'm not gonna remember what it's even called. The Creative Act by Rick Rubin.
Yeah,
Rick Rubin.
Rick Rubin.
And he mentions in that book that like ideas come to you like from the source, and like if it comes to you and you don't act on it or write it down, it will disappear and find like the next person worthy of that idea, which 100%. Is very heavy shit. But I started kind of getting ideas in that sense of like content and just different stuff, and I would write it down, and then the next thing I know, I would write a script of just like what I want it to be. And so most people don't recommend doing that because then it doesn't flow the same. But if I can write the script, write the lines, and it's efficient, I can bang it out. Yeah. So if I'm pretty locked in, like I can have one of those made in an hour. So record it in about 30 minutes, edit it in the same amount of time, and then captions, and then it's out.
Okay. Dig it. It's a good. I always ask. It's like part of the beauty of being involved in the analog and digital photography side of things is you learn to appreciate the few chances that you have. Now that I do a lot more analog work, it's like you see a sunset or you see something, sort of some glimpse of a moment where like, unless you're ready to rock and what's that Will Smith quote? It's if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
Facts.
it's that sort of thing, but then to the nth degree with all the film stuff. And this past summer, I actually did my first short on 16 millimeter like motion picture film. So this is like the same. It's a smaller film format, but like the same film that like Christopher Nolan uses, and like uses a special like ECN2 process and all this sort of cinema stuff that you expect from like Oppenheimer and whatnot. Even at his is like $2,500 a minute.
Whoa.
The smaller format I was using was around like 170 a minute. And I shot the thing, and literally I had 2 reels of film. So I'm like, we have enough for 1 or 2 takes for everything, for the entire short film. And we had some very, very skilled actors, PAs and sort of team to produce that, but gives you a whole level of respect. But I really like, there's overlaps and sort of corollaries with that, the athletic experience of like being in that flow state, everybody locked in, because the attitude on set when you're shooting digital and the attitude when on set when you're shooting film is totally like, it's people might be spaced out on their phones. Like when it's film, like everyone is dialed in. They know the vibe. They know what they're going to do. They've practiced their lines. We're running through sort of empty takes where we're not even filming, just like exploring, feeling out the space. Like I'm going to step, I'm going to hug you here. I'm going to walk up the steps. I'm going to pause here, feeling all those things. And seeing it evolve over time is, it gives me more and more respect for the movies that you see now. Like a lot of the A24 movies are shot on film. Pretty much all of Nolan's work is. So those are impressive nonetheless. But the more you do that, the easier it gets to do the digital stuff, because you trim away the fat and you clear out those thoughts in your head where you're like, maybe I should try this, and you end up scrapping it later. So it's distilled my thinking in a way where, like, when I was younger, I would take a couple hundred pictures at a photo shoot. Now it's like probably under 100. Sometimes I've done shoots like the guy I booked in Brooklyn. I took 6 photos total, all manual, all by hand. And every single one of them was good. So,
wow.
It just takes a lot of, it's sort of that, I don't know if you had like an elementary, like English teacher that's like, okay, write me a paper in like 3 pages, and then cut it down to 1 page, and cut it down to a paragraph, and then cut it down to a sentence. Like, what are you actually trying to say? And some of the best novels, like this book that
he wrote.
No, I wish. Let me think. When did I read this? 2018, 2019, something like that.
I mean, you gave it to me in like 21, 20, something like that. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm probably too well read. I spent a lot of time in the library and not enough time playing outside as a kid. So you just learn to respect like very good literature, because there's literally like no fat. It's like stand-up comedy. Like there's no fat on a joke, where it's like every single word needs to be there and it needs to hit. And there's a beauty in that, just like purpose and intention.
So what is that book that you brought us?
The book is titled Skin in the Game, Hidden Asymmetries in Daily Life by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, also known as NNT on Twitter. Usually that's his tagline, like dash NNT. He's a bit of a controversial figure in Stokes Fires in some respect, most famous for the Black Swan description of essentially stochastic events that are seemingly random things that happen but have an outsized effect on, so think 9/11, like the housing crisis, like because of 9/11 now you have the Patriot Act and all of TSA and all of those things. So it's like very small events that are significant but have an outsized magnitude of impact down the line. So he essentially wrote that about the equities market that crashed in the crash in 2008, and called it out like it's sort of like 8-ball corner pocket. He called it before it happened and made the tagline. That's sort of what made him famous. He's a professor, I believe, adjunct at NYU. I sent him an email, but he was busy. I was there just to go and hang out, but very Mediterranean type dude. But I really enjoyed this book. One, his writing is like super accessible. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, it's short. It's not super long. It's not really novel. And a lot of them are just short little anecdotes of sort of like reframing how you look at life. If you've read of any or heard of any of Naval Ravikant's, he's a VC guy. A lot of his Naval-isms. He also has a book. If I can remember it later, I'll share it with you. But this book in particular, the the title of said book has a weight rack that is actually asymmetrical. So there's a bunch of weights on this side and not so many on the other. And it talks about sort of all of those hidden asymmetries that you don't normally see. So things like your morning commute, say you live in a city and you're hitting the subway, or your train only comes every 30 minutes and you're 2 minutes late. Well, you're actually 32 minutes late because you missed the train that you needed to do. Mm-hmm. But if you were 2 minutes early, you still get there at the same time. So those are those sort of like asymmetric differences. And I look at it in the frame of like, obviously there's bad things that can happen, but I like to focus mainly on the positive. So looking on the upside of like, where can you bet a penny and like win $1? Mm-hmm. So small investments, whether it may be investing time in meeting new people and investing money in equipment. Like I look at that particularly with when I shoot film, when I do any of my sort of work where it requires an upfront investment to make things happen. So I might be spending 20, 30, 40 bucks, but you make something that like lasts forever. I was recently in New York and stopped by the MoMA, and they have beautiful prints that are they're called silver gelatin prints. So they're made in the darkroom from old photography. And the darkroom negatives, they're essentially bleached, fixed. They get cleaned up and processed in a way that they're archived and they don't change. And it's a very, I don't know, it puts a weird sentiment in my body and in my brain when you see these photos where someone clearly built it and made it with their hands maybe 250 years ago, and it looks exactly the way that they made it. It's like literally just like elemental silver. It's there. It's perfectly preserved. And to think that like that guy probably just, I don't know, spent like $5 of his own and obviously put time and effort. And then you make a piece of work that like lasts. It informs either a cultural perspective, tells a story, preserves a history. I think those tangible history objects are super important now and in forever. Generally speaking, what I've taken away from this book has been, one, to make more smaller bets on myself all the time. So like I applied that to photo work. I applied it to even when I was applying for jobs back in the day. It's just like, hey, send a guy an email on LinkedIn, ask a friend of a friend or whoever to show up. Investing in crypto, like I bought my first car with Bitcoin. I was like in it. I got in at Bitcoin at 9,000.
Holy shit.
And I got out at 69. So
there you go.
It was nice.
That'll do it.
I was in at Bitcoin at like a couple $100.
Oh, yeah, we just talked about this.
A couple $100, and I was out at a couple grand.
Yeah.
But you know.
And then like Dogecoin.
Yeah.
I missed that one. I had money in Dogecoin and I pulled it out. So
I did too, because it was a joke. So like I actually put some money into it, and then I pulled it out. It went up enough. Like it went up, I don't know, 10 times as much. But it later went up like 1,000 times as much. And I was like, oh, I'm just gonna sell it. It wasn't very much money for like anybody listening. $100 or $200. But for me, was not enough, like a lot to lose or gain. So I decided to put it into Dogecoin and kind of regret not just keeping it in there just to see what happened. But
I've just been sitting on that stuff. Like I back in 21 was when I became aware, like actually knew what was going on. I think that's when it became maybe a little more mainstream to like actually trade crypto. And so
I had people in Bitcoin train in like 2015.
Oh, I remember, dude, you remember Tony Bellabradich?
Yeah.
He was talking about Bitcoin when we were in like high school, like 2013. And I was just like, what the hell is this kid talking about? And now here we are.
Yeah.
And, but no, I mean,
that's the time I was buying it.
That's just so crazy.
2012 is when I bought it for the first time.
I've just been sitting on all of it. Like, I'm like, at this point, like I just kind of like put it in here and there. And I'm just leaving it.
Things not to do is don't gamble with it, because I mean, I did that when I was like in college. Like I put in like not like $20. I gambled it up to like a couple $100. Sold it when it was worth a couple thousand, which for me in college, my friends in college will remember. I was rich in college. I had like a couple grand cash. Like I didn't have to work.
Yeah.
That was crazy. You know, I think my rent was $250 a month at the most in college. So I was like,
God,
I was balling, you know? So if anyone wants to give me a hard time, like, oh, it could be, I'm like, look, it could be anything. All right. I mean, if I didn't buy a property,
what's
2007, you know,
Warren Buffett says no one ever, no, I don't know if it's Warren Buffett, but the phrase is no one ever went broke, turning a profit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I have only turned a profit with that, luckily.
That's all you can ask for.
You know, still, I really wish I kept on to a little bit.
Yeah.
But well, the halving's coming up too, actually.
It is.
So there's an opportunity potentially.
Tanked yesterday.
I saw. I've been watching because there's some predictive measures that it will go down before or go down right after the halving, like showcases, because it has done that before. I think the first time I saw the halving that I noticed it, and I was not buying into it at the time. I might have been buying it a little bit at a time. It's 2017. It went down from it was up at like 1,000. It dropped down to like 10 cents and went back up within like 24 hours.
Yeah.
And that was right after that halving, I believe. I think it was right after it happened. So I know some people say it can lower right after, it can lower right before, but I didn't see the other day that it went down like 10 grand, I think, in like one day.
It was
like
yesterday.
the worth.
It was it was
sure.
like 6 grand in a matter of an hour, maybe. That was like after, I think, the geopolitical events that happened yesterday.
Yes, yeah, there was that too.
Yeah.
Let me think here. Other bits and pieces from this book. It's titled "Skin in the Game," and I think both of you, in my mind, exemplify people who have skin in the game in your respective fields. And I think that guides. It's something that is socially sort of missed on a cultural level of like how having a vested interest. And I think I resonate more with sort of small business owners and entrepreneurs in that respect, where it's like your name is on the line. You're responsible for the final product. To me, it's more like literally like physiologically fulfilling to do work there, where it's like, yes, there's a higher standard and a higher bar, but you get like a really good organic connection with the person, whether you're helping them get healthier or helping them build an image of a particular brand. That to me is like super, super rewarding. So I try and integrate that as much as possible. And it's like whenever things are on the line, you don't make mistakes. Like I remember seeing a tweet where it's like I've never been a big note taker in school or at work, and it's just like the biggest filter for whether you remember something is like if it's important.
Absolutely.
Like,
that's true.
You don't forget like your mom's phone number. Like you don't forget your best friend. Like if God forbid, like your best friend at a funeral, you don't forget about a funeral. You don't forget about a giant event. And I think that's a really good filter. Now I think there's too much like noise in today's like social media environment. So it's like we do have these sort of abilities that are put in us from the start, where we can discern like what's truly important in the grand. And I don't want to get into the philosophy of it all, but when you're actually under the pressure, the man in the arena, so to say, you can see things I think more clearly and make better decisions.
Absolutely.
And that's been something I've tried to integrate more into my life, because we're at a point where digitally, like it's higher and higher levels of abstraction. You're disconnected from the true like work of doing things. I used to do manual labor when I was in college, even late high school, early college. I was like moving concrete, hanging drywall, painting buildings, and like it's hard work, but like it was very spiritually fulfilling. Strangely enough, and it was weird because I went to college and people sort of looked down on that whole like working like social class of people, and I'm like, I was at peace with myself. I slept like a baby every night, and I had a lot of time that maybe I just like to think by myself. But I remember one day in particular, my grandfather, who ran a contracting company, had me filling up a hole with gravel, and my entire job for 8 hours just shovel gravel and move it from the left to the right. And I just shoveled. And at the time I was saving from one of my first cameras. So I just like divided up the volume of the gravel and then kind of like broke it down into per shovel, what I was making per hour. And I was just like, okay. And then I turned it into sort of like a video game. I'm like stacking coins on the way out.
Playing like real Minecraft over here.
Yeah.
Literally like real Minecraft. So yeah, that's one of my favorite bits and pieces. So
Have you ever seen the meme that came out about Minecraft? It was like a meme that came out with a picture and it said, we took the kids out of the mines. Most popular game in the world was Minecraft. The kids want to go back to the mines. They yearn for the mines.
No, I agree with that. Hard work, dude. I think you could classify it in all different, like you could call us going to CrossFit as hard work, but something about just like having to put your head down and just get shit done. I don't know what it is. Like my girlfriend has her grandfather owns a farm up in like Northeast Pennsylvania.
You're gonna become a homesteader and leave us, Will? It was tempting, right? It's like, so tempting.
I loved every second of it, man. Like, I mean, so her grandfather's in like his 80s and he's like climbing trees and like just doing all this shit that like someone in their 80s isn't supposed to be able to do. And I look at that, I'm like, let's fucking go, man. Because like that's what I've been telling people for years. I'm like, you use it or lose it, you know? Mm-hmm. And that we spent 3 hours just like cutting up trees, stacking firewood, and I'm picking up logs that are like 95 pounds, and I'm just going back, forth, not even thinking about it.
Yeah.
Threw a Zen in. I'm like, this is the time of my life, bro. Like, I was just like, just working. That's all I got to do. I don't have to think. I just got to work. And I mean, my back was pretty lit up after it, but I'm like, this is the whole point. Like, I mean, I got shit done.
It's fulfilling.
Yeah.
I think that's why people do stuff like CrossFit, though, because if you sit and do like the normal cadence of what the majority of jobs that like we see people do, the 9-to-5 jobs aren't exactly the blue collar work.
Yeah.
If you sit at a desk, you're not doing blue collar work, but then you do like want to go do something hard, or if you have a lot of anxiety, then you kind of wonder why you have it. But it's like there's a way to put it out there, like there's a way to get it out of your system.
Yeah.
And I think the best way is out in nature and being able to be physical. I think that's where I feel the best. But then there's places and communities to find it. I think that's what is a benefit of like, if you're doing a 9-to-5, like there are many communities of people that think and feel the same and miss some part of their life, that they need to replace.
Yeah. I've noticed that the successful people that I've met that work, I guess, more in the tech, like kind of white collar space of things where it's like you're thinking with your brain like a lot. They almost all have a physical practice, that whether it's jujitsu, walking, yoga, what have you, and then something that they build or create like with their hands. Like it's like building model trains or boats, or for me, it's like I'm doing like analog film photography, something very tangible. I think it's a weird place to be because maybe 50 years ago you could just live without much intention or purpose behind like, okay, why am I doing this? And how am I integrating into because it was all a bit more natural and free flowing of like the things that made you feel good reinforced you to go and do those things again. And you never really put that much thought in. Like no one was like over optimizing their life in 1936.
Right. Yeah.
Like
definitely.
But now everything is so much more compartmentalized and distilled and focused, where if you do focused work, like you write good code, like you could make a couple thousand, like photography, one example, you can make a couple $1,000s in an hour. And then it's like, well, that was a distillation of all the knowledge you had in the past 10 years or whatever. And that all comes together at sort of a crux in a moment. And then it's like, well, what do you do for the rest of the day? And it's like, do you mentally prepare? Do you mentally sort of disengage and give yourself time to rest on the back end? It's sort of like you have to layer in all of these steps of like kind of ramping up and cooling down and resting and recovering and integrating and community building. And I think that's equally like exciting and also like terrifying because you have to, there's no right answer. We're sort of in a unique period of human history there. But I find myself when I don't have an answer, usually you like kind of think of what would my great grandparents do? Like it's funny seeing sort of their not like home remedies for health and sort of just hey, if you feel like shit, like go take a walk like in the sun. And not that that's sort of a cure-all, but like that's the first thing you should try on that list of things. So it's like there's a wisdom there that I think the Industrial Revolution and most of like the 60s and 70s with tech and the information age, it's like, okay, you're an old fart, I'll listen to you, but you can't even like turn on the computer. and I think we do owe them quite a bit more respect there, because there is a way of knowing and a way of being that is at core more human and more true to nature than we potentially could ever know, just because they've known it without the noise of being in the digital age. So
yeah, they're kind of lucky to not have known the digital age, during their periods of growing up. But at the same time, it's like a blessing and a curse. Like we get more information. Like I've learned almost everything I know because of it.
Yeah. Without the digital world, like I feel like I'd be like the crazy guy just spouting things on the corner of the street. Like I'm always researching things. I'm always learning new things, picking them up. But like it can be a hard time. Like how do you make money doing what interests you? Like how do you connect with people? How do you keep a regular schedule? All of those are all challenging to integrate. So
have you seen I think it was Huberman that said this. He was trying to like pin together like a theory behind why academics and people that work in that space tend to be they tend to lean into like endurance sports, whereas they don't tend to lean into lifting and combat sports. Okay. And he was trying to find out why, and he was like trying to say that it is kind of a portrayal of like class almost, where like these people kind of grew up in a certain way where like running track and field or something that might be more endurance based seems to just line up with the lifestyle of somebody that's spending more time in the academic world.
Yeah.
And I find that weird because I'm like, I don't really know if there's a difference, but there kind of is, because when you think about it, I mean, there's not a lot of big power lifters that are like professors necessarily. I'm sure there are, but the majority like do like 5Ks and runs, and like, you know, there's kind of a stigma behind it almost. It's strange.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is.
No, I think your point there about the class stigma is pretty on the nose. All the professors I had at CMU were like biking, running, that sort of thing, that were long form endurance forms of exercise, and I found it strange as well. I think there's also the unique position and environment where you're never in a position where you have to, like, for example, like firefighter, policeman. You see those people at jiu-jitsu, you see them at powerlifting. It's like you have to exert that full power of body, power of will to save someone's life, to save your life, and that the stakes just aren't that high. But on the flip side of things, those people often struggle to kind of integrate change in a long time scale. And like my undergrad was in biomedical engineering, and a lot of like the healthcare space, when you look at like pharmaceutical drugs, any sort of treatment that comes about, most of those have 3 to 5 year clinical trials, 3 to 5 years of clinical validation before the trial happens, and 3 to 5 years of like marketing and getting it. So from start to finish, say you had some like project, or this is your baby that you're working on. Realistically, like it came out of an academic lab 15 years ago. And then, so like you have the opportunity to see maybe 2 projects to completion in your entire life. It's like literally a longer time scale than having children in most cases. So I think that shifts the sort of mind space of a lot of academics, which to me, honestly, rubbed me the wrong way in certain respects, where I'm like, okay, why aren't you working more focused, more directly? Like obviously they have a strategy where like they don't burn out and they can keep doing things for a very long period of time. But for me, like that's why I always lean towards application and integration of business and entrepreneurship, because it's like, I think from the scientific and academic perspective, it's not really in a great space currently, because they have to essentially play both roles. And it's you see the same thing in like relationships and in business things now. It's like you don't want to get caught between things where you're not really acting in your vein of excellence. You're sort of doing one thing and you're sort of doing the other thing, and like you expend energy and it sort of falls to the wayside. And academics is like that now, because they're essentially forced to put on this mask, and guys like, okay, I need to like do this research to get grant money and fulfill these goals and do all this sort of like business execution style stuff. And that takes away energy from this sort of creative, like self-discovery, like the Isaac Newtons of the world that are just sort of looking at things in that respect. So a lot of the really, really cool inventions that we use on a day-to-day basis actually came out of a place called Bell Labs. Are you familiar? Bell Labs was a research institute that was around in the 40s, 50s, 60s, I think even 30s before that. But like the transistor, the radio, the telephone, pretty much everything that NASA did not create for like the moon project and moon landing. Well, no comment there. No, I'm kidding.
Alleged moon landing.
Alleged. Pretty much all of the modern discoveries there. So to bring things back to academics and sort of focusing one's efforts, they're split where they have to like not necessarily make a profit, but have a purposeful piece of work that has a direct start, finish, and clear ending and goal. And that sits opposed to the sort of free-flowing, like childlike exploration of the world. I'm like, okay, well, what happens if I put the fork in the microwave? What happens? You've seen those YouTube videos where it's like they just stick a different object.
Yeah.
But like that is a very valuable part of science. Even though most of it is like empty, useless information, you're learning that 1,000 ways to not make a light bulb. And unfortunately, nowadays, the academics are stuck between the two and they can't really put things together. So I think where we're having differentiation in the biotech and sort of science research institute, like DARPA had a lot of success. A lot of it is unknown because it is under lock and key and classified. The U.S. government also released a new project called ARPA-H. It's a healthcare version of DARPA, outside of the oversight of traditional NIH grant funding. So I really think that sort of dichotomy is the best way to go about it. It's short, targeted, focused bouts of like, this is the goal, this is our mission, this is what we're clearing out, and then free-flowing sort of associative discovery in whatever creative endeavor it may be. It's like, I want to make a new flavor of juice. Like, what happens if I grind up cauliflower and put it with mango and then some pepper and sort of see where things go and take them in a particular direction. But that model doesn't exist. And it's weird to sort of see the space that we've had. A lot of the technological gains that we've had over the past 20, 30 years are more optimization and less new idea generation, which is a strange thing, because people are now, with the capital markets the way they are, they're risk averse in a way. Like, no one wants to take that big leap and mess things up. Like, they'd rather take 5% growth year over year versus like the opportunity to jump and be a market leader, or jump a double, triple your growth, or what have you. That also comes on the opposite side of, you could just tank the whole thing. But I feel like the free-flowing associative state is the best way to it's the best way to create in general, to make science, to make art, to make anything that's worth doing. And unfortunately, that's just not the case in academia at the moment. So I think that will pop up you'll have like venture capital funding smaller companies that you see in that targeted approach. They're also doing this sort of free-flowing associative approach with OpenAI as a company. So OpenAI they don't have a business model, and they've received hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions. And they have ChatGPT, they have all these things, but like it's really nominal revenue amounts compared to like the amount of compute that they money they light on fire to just make these things happen. And essentially, they're like, yeah, we're figuring it out, and we'll teach it how to make money when it's done. And I think that's sort of a natural birth into the void of that space where Bell Labs was, that no longer is. We need something in that realm of being where you can just try and experiment. And you see that on a smaller scale with like YouTubers that do like the put the things in the microwave.
The Furby in the microwave.
Yeah. Trying like different films and different cameras. Like, you can sort of see that natural human tendency to explore, sort of, if you're in a dark room, sort of feeling where the walls are at, and then deciding when to take a sledgehammer to it and try something new. So that's a big part of research that I think will likely change in the upcoming decade or so.
So are you spending you had went to CMU, are you spending any more of your time in academia at all now that you've kind of left it? And I do want to actually kind of carry that over into like sports, because you did mention that if you were to go back, you would also do sports with it. So I just wanted to ask that question before we got off here, to ask about, your sports endeavors kind of tied with it, and things either you missed because of it, because you didn't do sports in it, or things that you continue to do now.
Yeah. That's a very good question. I picked up, I've had a weird mixed relationship with academic research. I did a summer research project my freshman year using CRISPR genome editing. So I actually edited the genome of a fruit fly, like a live fruit fly, which was crazy. So we made it like, we deleted some of its senescence or aging genes so it would live longer. Did a lot of that work in fruit flies. Realized that I was very much so a bull in a china shop in a research lab. Like, all the tools were too small for my hands. I kind of felt like a blob. Like, my fingers are too fat and thick, just from years of working with my hands, where even the desks, like, they're all the same height of someone like pipetting and doing research on a lab bench. Like, I'm hunched over, my back hurts. Like, my body hurts more after working an 8-hour day in a lab than like running a half marathon or something. It's insane. So I knew that particular flavor of research wasn't for me. But as I moved through school, there were more and more opportunities to pick up things like there's quant research, there's things you do in a computer, there's like psych research, you do screening and surveys and whatnot. I didn't publish any research outside of like the labs that I worked on in school, but one of the startups I worked for directly out of school was focused on precision medicine for, I guess, GI diseases, and in particular like pancreatitis and whatnot. So diseases of the pancreas, which to me thought like, oh, that's a boring old people disease. Like, who does that affect? And it's wild, because you do see a lot of really cool like genetic cases where people have just like, it's sort of like when you hear someone has a congenital heart defect, you can have that sort of same thing happen with any organ system. Heart stuff, obviously, it shows itself immediately, but the other things you might, like if your pancreas doesn't work the way it's expected to, you just might have like IBS, or you might not digest food well. And it doesn't scream and yell like, hey, this needs direct attention. So did some research there, actually got on my first patent, which was exciting in the software realm of things. Did some academic research. There's a really cool data set in the UK called the UK Biobank. Have you heard of it?
Mm-hmm. Maybe.
maybe. Yeah,
Maybe a little bit.
So it's like you imagine like going to the doctor. You have your healthcare records. You have like, okay, patient number A. Here's your labs. Here's your height, weight, whatever. Here's your smoking history. So in the UK, they have nationalized healthcare. So they actually have a genetic database of everyone there. So you have their health record and their genetic information. So you can make ties and associations to particular behaviors or health outcomes to either that person's clinical journey and treatment care or the genetics that they were sort of born with. Now, there are some open source data sets in America with that information, but very few of them are tied to genetics. There's one that's ongoing that isn't currently released. It's called the All of Us program. You've probably seen like billboards for that. And it's one of the most wide-ranging and inclusive efforts to genotype people in the United States. So that'll be exciting to work with. I think that's supposed to wrap up 2025, if I'm not mistaken, something around there. And then that data will be probably open, de-identified, of course, but open to analyze. And then where research and I guess academic experience align, looking through the rear view mirror, so to say, athletically. Like I've dove into jiu-jitsu. I picked that up in New York when I lived there, just because I played rugby and soccer when I met Will. I remember teaching you how to punt a soccer ball.
Oh yeah, he was a keeper on our team before I started playing.
Yeah. What age was this?
10, 11.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
10, 11.
Travel team, East Allegheny Tornadoes. Yeah. And then I joined the team and I started playing in the net, and then he ended up moving to Penn Trafford.
Yeah. It was me, you, Vinny, Will, Grant, Tyler.
Yeah. All the bros. Yeah.
Crushing it.
Yeah. So kind of pivoted from soccer to rugby in college, and then rugby to jiu-jitsu in New York, just because it's like there aren't many 120-meter pitches that are pristinely cut and maintained in New York City.
That's true.
So just to stay active, pivoted to jiu-jitsu. And now I've walked my way back to rugby. I've been blessed with I've been affectionately described as a driver leg. So when I kick things, they go particularly far. So like with rugby, I can hit like drop was essentially like a field goal off the ground with a heavier ball, like 60, 65 yards out. I'm really, I have it in the back of my mind. I actually purchased this 2 or 3 weeks ago, but I did buy like a regulation NFL football. Because when I was in high school, freshman year, I went and lifted with the football team, and I walked on never having kicked a football in my life, and I kicked a 50-yard field goal.
It's not bad.
And now I'm curious, like what my range looks like as a full-grown adult, and it's just like that's a weird thing where I thought it would, like it's the use it or lose it thing. I thought it would atrophy and get worse, and I'm like, I'm just bigger and stronger, and I think I was just a physical late bloomer. So like, maybe if Chris Boswell gets hurt and they put the bat signal up, they'll call me down to Acrisure. Who knows?
I was gonna say I don't know why you don't just film a video and just train kicking just for a little bit, just for the heck of it. Like,
well,
I think you just go do it this summer, just when it's nice. I just train kicking just for like a little bit, and just like make a video, just see how far you can just kick, just throw it up online.
I saw that reel you put out.
Oh, yeah, I put one up with rugby. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
60-yard dingers from rugby. So
from the angles, yeah.
Got to hit up Pat McAfee and be like, hey, because he's like soccer boy, plum boy. It's like, dude, we had the same life to a degree up until you went the kicking route. So if I did it all over again, I probably would have kicked in college, because it's like chill with the football team, get all the sort of nice gym equipment. And what angered me at CMU was like I couldn't access like the varsity lifting. They had like segregated like lifting equipment for the
Do they really? Because I've seen their
NCAA
normal public gym.
Yeah, and it sucks. And so like I wanted to take my health seriously, and I felt like this was sort of, I don't know, it was backwards. I'm like even if I have to pass some sort of training course to say like I know what I'm doing, I'll be responsible, put things back, so be it. That was like super frustrating, because I'm like, in a place where you're so physically stressed, like you need to prioritize your health above all else. So I think that's something that they could potentially like improve in the future. So
that was the best part about being a pit athlete, because I mean our gym was off limits, and I mean it was just the teams in there, and I mean it wasn't like open access. Like I couldn't go in there at any time, but like we were always just like we're in, we're out.
Oh yeah, early practices.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So. Yeah. The last time I saw you relational to rugby, you had broken yourself. Do you remember this? I think it was at the Joe Rogan show. Or was that some comedy show? I saw you and you were broken. You were like legitimately like.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, 2020. 21.
Was that 20 or 21?
21.
Yeah.
Yeah. I separated my shoulder.
I've done that twice. Yeah.
Which is fun. Separated my shoulder and tore my entire AC joint open, so all 5 connect just gone. So I had the sort of like the SpongeBob meme where your arm just like falls off. I literally had an arm that was just hanging.
Dang.
I saw him at a comedy show, and I went up to give you like a hug or a shake, and you're like, "Oh, I can't."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Why?" And you're like, "I think I broke my collarbone." And I was
arm is
like, "You think
disconnected.
you broke it?" And you're just standing here. You're about to go watch a comedy show. I was like, "What is wrong with you? What's going on here?"
I mean, it's
But it got fixed later.
Yeah,
like
got
the next
fixed.
day or
Yeah.
something. It was like you were just waiting a day.
Yeah, I was waiting for. I had a very good German surgeon. His name Dr. Volker Musal. Shout out, he's the man. He does a lot of shoulder surgeries for the Penguins and the Steelers. Pretty much, I'm like, I'm going to the best guy in Pittsburgh because I cannot go anywhere else. And it was crazy because they essentially projected maybe 9 months to a year in recovery, and I was cleared doing push-ups in 10 and a half weeks.
Holy shit.
So he's good. And of course, like, I did my best to drink my bone broth and collagen and like pump myself with every nutritional recovery agent known to man.
I was gonna say, did you have any extra peptides?
No, I
didn't. I've kind of played around with some with an injury.
This was pre-peptide.
Okay.
And then sadly, the good peptides, the FDA starts to clamp down on pretty quickly. So just collagen, protein, biotin a little bit, mainly just lowering stress and eating large amount, just because you need a little bit of fuel to feed the furnace. And you're essentially like rebuilding whole parts of your body. So you have to think like, okay, well, I'm recomposing. I need a lot of protein, a lot of fat, what have you. That's been a big thing for me. But yeah, I had a whole like health fiasco in 2020. They put me on a drug that like lowered my bone density and lowered the elasticity of my joints and stuff. So I think that's where the injury came from, because like it was a very mundane tackle. Like, it's the sort of thing you collide with people. You'd never even think in a million years like, oh, that was rough.
Yeah.
And looking back, like the season later, I actually have a situation where I went to like cut and tackle someone, and he juked and went the opposite way. And then like my knee essentially went underneath and bent like forward. So like the PCL is essentially gone. And I like, as it happened, I'm like, oh, my PCL is like gone. And I stood up and I was fine. And I was like, oh, well, something was just wrong with my body at that period of time. And thankfully I've thus healed and kind of gotten to the place where I'm at now.
So what are you working on in the future here? What short-term stuff can you talk about that you want to talk about, either with projects or athletics or both? If you have some big goals with athletics too, we would for sure love to hear it,
Absolutely. Yeah. A few different things. So athletics, I am jumping back into jiu-jitsu. I'm trying to get my purple belt this year. So I'm a blue belt.
Okay.
I have gained weight just because I've been on that bulk grind. Last year I fought at like 195, and right now I'm at like 240, and so it's punishing to be under my my side control. I'd like to be a little more nimble, so I'm going to probably.
That would suck. Yeah, you would crush me right now.
I really apologize to the guy at my gym. I actually broke his ribs by accident in my legs.
Oh shit!
But I was exerting a little too much pressure there. That being said, so definitely try and get my purple belt this year. Outside of physical stuff in the gym, if you're watching this and you have a cool story and you have a cool face or a cool dog or a cool house or apartment or thing that needs to be photographed, like I'll plug myself there. Feel free to hit me up. I do a lot of very niche, very specific work. So I'm not really a high volume person, but whenever you have a particular story to tell that you want to resonate and sort of stand out, and Ethan has seen some of these like large format images, you hold it and you're like, this is fundamentally different than just a regular photograph you take on your digital camera and what have you. So certainly working on that. And then I have my own personal projects. Last summer, actually, I was in an artist residency where I built, so you mentioned like expertise with cameras. I built a camera from scratch, which taught me a lot about everything.
Absolutely crazy, by the way. That is like absolutely nuts to do.
So you have to sort of scope out, okay, like I built everything except for the lens. So I got the lens. It was an old process duplication lens, what they would use to like copy newspapers and stuff back in the day. And then the back of it is 16 by 20. So like a full frame sensor in a camera is like 2 inches and some change. It's 16 by 20. That's the sensor size. So
big.
It's huge.
Way bigger.
Yeah. So if you scan that thing in a drum scanner, you're looking at something around 16 to 20,000 pixels on the short edge.
Jeez.
And
Massive.
4K is 2,000 pixels, so it's
Okay.
10 times. Yeah. It's almost 100 times more resolution. So it makes sort of one-off pictures, and I'm in the midst of finishing that. I have the front of it built, the back of it built. I got the film holder, and I essentially need to make a unit on the back for the film to slide in and slide out, which functionally isn't too hard, but you can't. The challenge in manufacturing that is it can't have any leaks of light, so it has to be totally light tight on the inside. And then once that's out in the clear, I will be probably parading that around and doing portraits. Maybe I'll do a workshop or something outside of the city. So right now I'm sort of in between a lot of spaces in life, and I have a studio space in the East End that I use pretty frequently, and I'm probably going to move to a bigger space across the street, same neighborhood, in May, potentially, waiting for all the lease paperwork to get in. So
Nice.
yeah.
Well, I think you might be the most interesting man in the world, by the way. So I think you probably topped the list, especially just in Pittsburgh in general. I think you're pretty up there. But appreciate having you on, man. Where else can people find you? Just like on social media, if you want to throw those plugs out there for like seeing this work that you're talking about.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm working on my personal website, so I won't plug that right now. I have to update a lot of stuff I've been working on. But generally speaking, you can find my photography work at cameron.click, and then film.cameron.click for all the film work. I've been pushing that, so that's definitely the more active page out of the two. You can also find me on TikTok, YouTube for all things photography, but I've definitely had a good bit of traction on Instagram, so that's where I would direct people.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks to everybody for watching today. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for 111 Juice Bar for giving us some juice, and we will talk to some more people. Thank you again for coming on,
Of course.
and until
Thank you
next
for
time,
having me.
guys.